in 1 hour here, this 1 hour, I want to get into a discussion of the sanctuary and sanctuary time. Before I do that, we got to talk about Mrs. Beautiful over here. And there's just 2 or 3 slides I want to share with you to give you something to go home and really twist the gears. Okay? This is Revelation 17. And this is Jezebel. By the way, her name in Hebrew is Isabel. In chapter 17, verse 1, there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials. Those are the 7 last plagues. Had the 7 vials and talked with me, saying to me, "Come here, I'm going to show you the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. The inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication." So whoever this woman is, she is a seducer. She's drawing everybody in. Kings of the earth, the common people, whoever. She has something that everybody is bowing down and saying, wow. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. No, that's got to be a mistake. Because it says right there, she was sitting upon many waters. So the next verse cannot be, she's sitting on a scarlet-colored beast. Well, how many places can you sit at one time? I mean, scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, decked with gold, precious stones, and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. That's verses 3 and 4. Upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, abominations of earth, and here's the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. No. She's sitting on many waters. No. She's sitting on a scarlet beast. I mean, she may be that wide, but... These are the kinds of things that drive me crazy, keep me awake at night. What in the world is going on? In verse 1, the woman is sitting on many waters. In verse 3, she's sitting on a scarlet-colored beast. In verse 9, she's sitting on 7 mountains. Where is she sitting? Now, if you keep reading, the angel says to John, I'm going to show you a mystery. I've already got a mystery on my hands. I'm going to show you a mystery. The 7 heads, remember the scarlet-colored beast had how many heads? 7 heads. How many horns? 10 horns. Where did we meet the scarlet-colored beast first? Chapter 12, Great Red Dragon. 7 heads, 10 horns. And by the way, chapter 12 belongs to the book of Revelation and the time of the end. You can allude to war in heaven as though something happened back there 4,400 billion years ago, but Chapter 12 belongs to the end. And it's time we started reading it as present truth. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Now the next verse says, and there are 7 kings. Please listen. 5 are fallen. 1 is. And 1 is yet to come. And he will endure or last or carry on just a little while. Now there's an 8th. And he is of the 7. So let's get a little lesson, shall we? No one knew. No one not angel, not man, knew that God had a secret plan. The first indication of it is in Genesis 3:15. I think Lucifer went into a panic with Genesis 3:15. He had no idea that God had a backup plan. He thought he was going to hold his feet to the fire. And he has. He did. He has. But God had a plan to save the law, because you cannot have anything in creation without law. And in God's plan, He saved the law and yet saved the sinner. And the devil and his bunch have been trying to turn themselves into human beings ever since, so they can be saved, have a chance at it. They can't do it. This is why when you get over into 1 John, it says, look, there's a way in which you can know if a spirit is from God or not. Here it is. Any spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. Well, what's going on there? Doesn't everybody know Jesus came in the flesh? Yeah, but He was real Jesus in real flesh. The devil and his bunch have been trying to turn themselves into real flesh. And they have not succeeded. And they're not going to succeed. They're lost. They're lost. But they still have time, and they're still hanging on, and they're still fighting and biting. So they're still around. Now, 7 kings, 5 are fallen. This whole process started when God was bringing into being a nation that was no nation, a people that was no people. This is where it began. Oh no, it began with Abraham. This is where a people that was no people and a nation that was no nation was born. Right here. The devil had anticipated that this was going on because of the promises made to Abraham 400 years earlier. And so when the time came for Moses to be born, Pharaoh, under the unction, under the moving, under the control of a demonic spirit, said, we got to kill all those male Hebrews. So he tried the same way he tried with Jesus. The same way. All right? He's forced to behave the way he has to behave. He's trying to stop God's plan before it can be born. By the way, that's what Revelation 12 says. The woman is going to bring forth a child, and the dragon is trying to stop this taking place. Been going on a long time. Egypt was Satan's first attempt to short-circuit the plan that would bring Messiah into being. Assyria came in, took 10 tribes away, tried to take the other 2. Stood outside the wall and said, their God didn't save them, He's not going to save you. It was an uh-oh moment. Egypt won. Assyria 2. Babylon 3. Medo-Persia 4. And I thought you said it wasn't Greece. We're talking about every power that came along and invaded the land and took possession of the land and made overt attempt to either destroy the Jewish faith, water it down. It was the Greeks under Antiochus Epiphanes. He hated the Jews so much, He rode into Jerusalem with a pig, took it into the temple, and offered it on the altar. Okay? Now the Jews thought this was the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. No, it wasn't. It was just a type. That's all. It was a shadow. 5 are fallen. They're gone. 1 is. That's in John's day. That was present in John's day. John was present in that day. And 1 is yet to come. And when he comes, he will last only a little while. Now, what do all of these powers have in common? They tried to get rid of the Jews. They tried to obliterate the people that God said, I made you a nation. I made you a people. And the devil has tried to curse them. The devil has tried to crush them, has tried to do away with them. Ahmadinejad is a nutcase. We're going to throw Israel into the sea. We're going to kill every one of them. There will be a real Holocaust. No, he's not the last one. He's just a big mouth. Now, I cannot prove this one, but be very careful before you disregard it. If you don't know about Hitler, not only was he responsible and proud of it and declared his pride in getting rid of the Jews, the Jews were thrown into a camp and were tattooed, marked. This may be the one that would come and last for a little season. I don't know. Maybe it's Ahmadinejad. I don't think so. I don't think he's going to get this far. I think he's boasting. I think he's a nutcase. But there's an 8th. That's no way to... There's an 8th. Now it says the 8th is of the 7. You need to understand that translating from one language to another, there's something always lost and something always gained. One of the difficulties in taking Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek and turning them into English is the way, the idiosyncrasies, the way in which they used prepositions. You know what a preposition is? Preposition is a word that gives the relationship of one thing to another. It's out of, it's under, it's above, it's... Okay? So what we have is a classic example here in Revelation 17 of the way a preposition is used in translation here. And the 8th, he is of the 7. You could also say correctly, he is out of the 7. He is like the 7. He is after the 7. I'm looking at you. Well, where does this 8 business? Why should I pay any attention or you pay any attention to this? We've done this for several years. Let's do it again. Daniel sees a beast rising out of the sea, and he has 10 horns. 1 head, 10 horns. He describes first 3 beasts and then this terrible, diverse beast. He says, unlike the others I had seen. Unlike because those are recognizable animals. Those represent real nations, powers, secular, whatever, on the planet. This 4th one, I can't even recognize him, is what Daniel is saying. He's unlike anything that I've ever seen. As he describes the action and activity and evil deeds of the beast in verses 7 and 8 of Daniel chapter 7. He's stamping, he's snorting, he's biting, he's crushing. And by, a little horn pushes up. And as the little horn pushes up, it says he uproots. Interesting word. You'll want to check it out in the original when you get a chance. He uproots, or he pushes up, or he pushes out, or he gains control over 3 of the 10. And so I've asked people, and I'm asking you, 10 minus 7 equals what? 8. That's Alabama math. 10 minus 7, minus 3, pardon me, equals 8. Did I say 7 minus 10? 10 minus 3 equals 8. How is that? Because there were 10 horns. 3 are uprooted or pushed aside, and there's a little horn that comes up. That's number 8. And we don't meet Mr. or Mrs. 8 until we get over here to Revelation 17. And we have this adjunct, this addition, this just thrown into the mix. I'm going to show you a mystery. It's still a mystery. And the 8th, he's of the 7. How about like the 7? Behaves like the 7. And what is this power going to do? What he really wants to do is take the Jews' land away from them. And sit where he ought not, Jesus said. Stand where he ought not, Jesus said. Why does the devil want that place? Because God, through the prophet, said, Jerusalem is mine. I have put my name on this place. It is mine. And the day is coming, God says, when I will move my throne, and I will move myself, and I will move my palace, and I will sit here. And the devil in Isaiah, 14 says, no, I'm going to sit there. And the end of prophecy is, he gets there and he sits there, but a moment. But a moment. I believe that something is going to happen in that second crisis, and the Ark of the Covenant will be found. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I believe the Ark of the Covenant will be found. I believe that at a certain time in the future, there will be a command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, Daniel 9. And there will be a plan put forth to build another temple on that place, on that site. I believe the Vatican, who is absolutely the chief engineer of the New World Order, chief architect, chief engineer, and will be architect and engineer of the One World Order. I believe she's going to put forth a plan to build this temple, and we're going to call it a temple for all nations to flow into, and 3 great religions. We'll just have one door over here for you, and one door over here for you, and one door over here for you. Is it not written? My house shall be called a house for all people. Okay? And when that temple is built, and by the way, there will be a third temple. You can check that one out in Daniel 11:45. He shall plant the tabernacles of his palace. Check it out in the original. He will put his temple in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. At that time shall Michael stand up. You can't sit in God's place. You can't take God's name. You can't claim to be God. Somebody with a bigger than you is going to get into the fight. Now this is where the world is going. The world doesn't have a clue. I can't change and you can't change where things are going. I can tell you this. There is absolutely no device. There's no invention of man or the devil that can outwit God, can beat God, can defeat God. You and I, unfortunately, live on the battleground where these 2 superpowers are going to slug it out at the end of time. You and I are what's referred to as collateral damage. Okay? We're here. Now, if you don't want to be here, you could become a Baptist and get out of it. Okay? Consider this. Now, this may not be a correct interpretation. Then it would have to be Islam in this slot. What many people do not know, and never really broke upon my, thinking until I visited the Middle East and visited in a Muslim country, that I discovered that in both World War I and World War II, Islam sided with Germany. Germany paid them off in gold, bought them, and they fought on the side of the Germans against the British and against, okay? This is larger than, is what I'm trying to say to you, and is large enough to include Islam. Now, where we're going on the planet is fraught with peril. By that, I don't mean that you and I, or people who don't really get the picture, are necessarily lost. But there's always a price to be paid. If I could go and meet a person of Muslim faith on a one-on-one basis, he or she deserves as much dignity and respect as anybody else on the planet, as a human being. They're a child of God. I want them to recognize me as a child of God. Unfortunately, the way things are going presently, it's not a matter of one-on-one. It's hotheads taking over and stirring up Islam. And they will tell you and me right now, we've been ordered by Allah to get rid of you. So you're either going to bow down or we're going to cut your head off. That's the plan. And for some reason, I just don't take too friendly to that. I don't know why, but I'm not in harmony with Allah's command. Now, there are all kinds of people out there who are trying to tell you and me that Allah and Yahweh are one and the same. If you buy into that, like Glenn Beck says, I got a bridge, No. Allah and Yahweh are not one and the same at all. I have a very good friend, Adventist background all his life. In recent years, he and his family and some very close friends have become part of a Messianic group. I have lots of friends inside Adventism, outside Adventism, various faiths. If you're not aware of it, the Messianic movement among Christians crosses denominational lines and is the fastest growing Christian movement in the United States. That's a fact. There are all kinds of people who are becoming part of. I have lots of good friends, and they are good friends who are part of this. So this one good friend, he's attending, services. And he says to the rabbi, he says, Rabbi, have you ever investigated the 10th plague that fell on Egypt? Well, I know what it was. It's the death of the firstborn. So my friend said to him, Rabbi, who's the firstborn? And he said the rabbi stood there and it was like 5 lights coming on at once. You see, Armageddon is the last, this is the death of the firstborn. And the firstborn is Ishmael, the daddy, granddaddy, great-granddaddy of Islam. And they are the firstborn. And what patriarchal heritage believes is that the firstborn owns the birthright, owns the land, owns the wealth, is entitled to. And this is why when Muhammad came along, 600-700 AD, he rewrote the Old Testament. The Quran is nothing but a rewrite of the Old Testament. That's all it is. And when Abraham comes to the mountain and he's going to take Isaac up there, why, Muhammad just changed the name of Isaac to Ishmael. And he's got the whole story so that Ishmael is the firstborn and entitled to all the wealth which God promised to Abraham. They believe they are chosen of God. They just call him Allah. No, he's not the same God. And the Quran is not the same book. The death of the firstborn is a prophecy of Armageddon. When a third of the men of the earth there's 1.2 billion Muslims on the planet, and a third of 6 billion is 2 billion, and so few Chinese are going to get in there. Kings of the East, from the East. Whatever it is, there's a whole bunch of folks going to die. And that plague in Egypt never made sense. Everything else was lice and mice and frogs and all natural. That last plague, you can't account for that. You try any way you want. That's supernatural. I mean, the death of a donkey because he was firstborn. There will never be peace. There will never be peace this side of the end, that side of the end, as long as the firstborn is alive. Are you saying God's going to kill all the Muslims? No. I believe there will be many, many, many of them in heaven. Just like those folk who left Egypt, they all died. Paul says in Hebrews, these all died in faith not having received. Doesn't mean they're necessarily lost. But what our daddies and our mamas do affects us, like it or not. And Islam is affected by daddies and mamas and granddaddies. And they have been dealt a bad deck of cards. And this business of we're going to have peace in the Middle East is, pardon me, baloney with a capital B. Not in 10 lifetimes. This has been going on for 3,500 years plus. And anybody can try all they want, and God bless them for trying. I do think they should read the book. I'm quoting an author who says the scenes soon to be enacted on earth have scarcely been dreamed of. We cannot, you and I cannot fathom where this is going. And where it's going is boom, kaboom, boom, boom, boom. And at the end, these three critters are going to... That's why Jeremiah describes the end, and he says, evil shall go forth from nation to nation, and a great whirlwind shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth. And I looked, he said, and there was no man, and nobody, there were dead bodies everywhere, and nobody to bury them. So sometimes I say, and sometimes I think I would like to live through to see Jesus come. And sometimes I think I would like to move to Alaska and watch the whole thing on the internet. Okay? Now we're going to put this DVD on. It's just 21 minutes. Please listen. My good friends who are part and parcel of the Messianic movement, they have become feast keepers. Feast keepers. Okay? And very often they call, email, and say, Brother Wheeling, please join us for Passover. Please join us for, please, please, please. Okay? Just happened a few weeks ago. And they don't really know how to take Brother Wheeling, because Brother Wheeling comes, gives a seminar on prophecy, and he talks about the feast and the sanctuary. And they call Brother Wheeling and say, Brother Wheeling, you should tell everyone they have to attend Passover. They have to. We're commanded to keep Passover. Ooh. 21 minutes, George. Let's turn it on. "30, 35 years ago, if you were to travel widely, you would, from time to time, become acquainted with persons, Christians, who were becoming involved in what I call the Messianic Christian movement. All right? It was just really blossoming about 30, 35 years ago. And today, if you want to go online and do a little checking around, you will find that Messianic Christianity is the fastest segment or element of Christianity today. It's the fastest growing. It crosses denominational lines. It blurs denominational lines. It whatever, okay? And in my travels, I have hundreds, perhaps several thousand friends, good friends, who have become involved in Messianic Christianity. All right? I have them here and abroad and whatever, around the globe. And we communicate. Many of these people, many of them, don't really know how to relate to Brother Charles Wheeling, because I talk to people about sanctuary and sanctuary times and the feast days and all of these kinds of things. But as one phone call just a few weeks ago said, Brother Charles, you need to encourage everybody to come for Passover, because, we have to keep the feasts. And it puts me on the spot. Because these are good friends. And they don't understand where I'm coming from. And I find it very difficult to understand where I'm coming from. I do understand where they're coming from. They're reading the Bible, and God says in no uncertain terms, you will keep, you will observe. All right? The difficulty here, and there is a difficulty here, is that laypersons do not understand what a construct is. They don't understand what context versus proof text really means. And so recently, some friends really, they put me on the spot, and, Brother Wheeling, why aren't you keeping the feast, and why aren't you urging the people to keep the feast, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said, recently, one of my grandchildren had a birthday, and we had a birthday party. And we went there and we celebrated. And what were we celebrating? Birthday! Whose birthday were we celebrating? Was it my birthday? No. Whose birthday was it? It was this person's birthday, in this case a child. It was his birthday. We have to understand that this book is divided into two parts. Over here, someone had a birthday. This is where the Jewish people as a nation was born. I made you a people who were not a people. I made you a people. You who were not a nation, I made you a nation. All right? These people had a birthday. It started in Egypt. It started with the Exodus. It started with Passover. Passover is a birthday. Whose birthday is it? I'm not a Jew. I'm a Gentile. Yes, but God says, remember my feast. Absolutely. He also says on this side that those are shadows of things to come. And what's coming is my birthday and your birthday. And this is why the feasts are so important for you and me on this side. But most of my friends are spending their time and attention over here. And I know they understand and recognize that, well, this has a further application, further meaning, larger meaning, more promise. But they're spending all of their time and their attention over here. And I'm trying to say, I want a birthday. And this is where my birthday is coming. That's what the promise of these feasts is all about. And then it becomes our birthday. Now the Jews came to Jesus and New Testament Christianity, and they couldn't handle this. They did not know how to handle it. First of all, they had on this side of the cross, they had the leadership of Israel who had to contend with Jesus. And they saw that Jesus was a threat to their habits, their religious forms and ceremonies. Jesus is a threat. That's why they said, it's better one man die than we all perish. He was a threat. He was changing the whole thing. He was not doing away with this. He was adding to the meaning. He was enlarging the meaning. He was saying, this was a type, this was a shadow, guys. Did not my covenant with Abraham say, the blessing I give you is going to bless all nations? By the way, the word Gentiles is nations. These feasts are wonderful. And if people are inclined, encouraged to observe them and come together, fantastic. I don't have a problem in the world with it. I think when people get together for a camp meeting, for anything, and they are there because they want to worship God and they want to talk about God and they want to study about God and all the rest, I say, fantastic. I don't have a problem with it. So when my Messianic friends say, how about coming to Passover with us? If I can, if that date is open, I'll be there. But please don't call me up and try to put some guilt trip on me and tell me if I didn't make it to Passover, my ticket to the 144,000 is over. Okay? No. Now, Paul had this problem. And so many of my Messianic friends come and they want to just totally convince me and they want to totally settle the issue and they start telling me things. Well, Paul kept the feasts. I said, where did you get that? Oh, Paul kept the feasts, and they got 2 or 3 instances in the New Testament they can point to. I said, please keep reading. When Paul became a Christian, he went into the desert of Arabia for 14 years and did not come out. Don't tell me he kept the feasts. When Paul had occasion to go back to Jerusalem on the feasts, he went. Why? Because he wanted to preach to the Jews. Because he had friends. Because it had been a long time since he'd been there. But don't come with this very weak, poor argument that I'm obligated to keep the feast, somebody else's birthday, because Paul kept the feast. The truth of the matter is, Paul was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was a feast keeper, believe me. When he got here, he's out among the Gentiles. And so now the Jews over here who, quotes, have become Christians, they're dogging his steps and they're going to all of his Gentile churches saying, You got to. Yes or no? I mean, it's written in the book. All you got to do is read it. Let no man judge you, therefore, regarding these matters. And he goes on to say, 2 verses later, these are shadows of things to come. Paul understands that God did something wonderful and marvelous and meaningful right here. He raised up this nation. Why? Because out of this seed comes Messiah. And all of these things were promised prophecies for all of us. I want a birthday of my own. When was this nation born? At Passover. When was this nation born? At Passover. When will the great nation be born? When we pass over. God's telling us something. God's showing us something. Wonderful things, wonderful things. But we must not allow ourselves to get sidelined and distracted and pushed against the wall. And we've got to do, it's very difficult. It's difficult because a person's conscience is sensitive. And that's good. We wish more people had sensitive consciences. That's good. But Paul was getting back a dose of his own medicine is really what was going on. He was so Pharisaical, and now the Pharisees are going to dog his steps till he's gone. Okay? It's difficult to see. It's difficult to get your arms and your head and your heart around. But there's something going on here that is so much larger. So much larger. See, the promise is a nation will be born in a day. What we have to have, what God has to do on this planet, please listen, is break down denominations. If He has to beat them, break them to pieces to get it done, so be it. Why? Because the promised prophecy of Scripture is this. We will all come in the unity of the faith. And there will be one Lord and one faith and one baptism. Oh, how far are we from there? I'll tell you how far we are from there. The latter rain. That's all. That's all. When God pours out His Spirit, He's going to bring minds and hearts and people together. Those who are God-fearers, fearing God in the only way they know how. God's going to break down all those barriers in ways you and I can't even possibly imagine. But if you want some idea, go to the book of Acts, and there's Peter. He just wants to take a nap. I know the feeling. And so he's up on top of the house. Get a little breeze. And he dozes off. And next thing you know, he's having a dream. And it's a bad dream. And he sees this sheet coming down, and it's got all these unclean animals on it. And okay, I know they're unclean animals. No. There's a voice now. It says, Peter, kill and eat. Uh-oh, this is a Nebuchadnezzar deal all over again. Lord, you know I've never touched anything unclean. Never. Let's let the sheet down again, boys. How many times does it take? Peter, now wake up and get up, Peter, because some unclean folks are at the front door. And they have come to bring you, take you to meet some other unclean folks. All right? And by the way, don't you call anything common or unclean that I call clean. Now wait a minute. Over here, God tells the Jews, have nothing to do with those Gentiles. Don't associate with them. Don't even eat with them. And all of a sudden, we've got this change. Now, what would you do if all your life, your whole habit, your whole training, your whole everything, You do what Peter said. No. And God says, you don't understand, Peter. I have a plan, and it's bigger, larger than you. You and I, in this world, are on the way to the kingdom. Whether we know it yet or not, we're on the way to the kingdom. God has a plan. And He knows the timing of this plan, when it's all coming together. It looks to me like it's coming up time. Just looks that way. We're on the way to a birthday party. And whose birthday party will it be? His, yours, or ours? Yes. Now, I handed you a sheet. What about prophecy? Now, I've given you this before. I believe I have. We're not going to read it. Not going to take the time to read it. But I'm asking you, in a quiet time at home, without interruption, read it. Then read it again. Read it again until you get the point. The Bible starts with the chapter in Genesis 3 of God promising, I'm going to bring you back home. Genesis 3:15, I'm going to send you a Savior. I'm going to bring you back home. I'm going to put these clothes on you, but they're temporary clothes, and I'm going to bring you back, and you're not going to be naked anymore. The Bible opens with God's children in the garden. The Bible closes with God's children in the garden. Okay? That's the plan. To get His children back home. Put the family back together. That's what it is, in simple terms. And this business of these promises that God has made. How many promises? Go down through. Go down. Abraham, I promise you. Isaac, I promise you. Jacob, I promise you. All these promises. And Jesus promises the disciples. And the disciples promise the people. And none of these grand promises has ever met fulfillment. Not yet. Oh, yes, but Jesus came. Yes, but He didn't come as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and that's what everyone was looking for. That's what everyone expected, including John the Baptist. All right? Jesus came, but He did not come as Savior in the sense of we're out of here and gone. He came in the sense of a bleeding Savior, a lamb Savior. Okay? Now, it's Jesus Himself who says to you and me, in no uncertain terms, the Scripture cannot be broken. If God has made all of these promises, He keeps His word. His promises are never broken. But these promises are this side of. I'm in Egypt. I haven't crossed Jordan yet into the promised land. All these promises, wonderful promises, they're over on this side. So if they're on this side, they need to be met. They will be met. I am persuaded with everything in me that all these grand promises are going to be fulfilled, as it were, in a moment of time with the last generation. And what are these promises? Go back and review them. Abraham, north, south, east, and west, all the nations. Yeah, you want to know the end, where you get all the way to the end of this? I tell you, Jesus says, many shall come from the east and many shall come from the west and sit down in the kingdom with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These promises have to be somehow working and being fulfilled on this side as well as that side. I don't know if you understood what I just said. John the Baptist is preaching and he says the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Was John the Baptist really preaching about 2,000 years down the road? I don't think so. I don't think he thought so. So he is a mouthpiece for heaven. He is promising something. He is saying something. And if it doesn't come to pass until way over yonder on the other side, when all is bliss and streets are paved and all the... it doesn't make sense to promise me relief on this side where I really need it, and then deliver it way over yonder when I don't need it. So if you get the gist of what I'm saying, if we are indeed the last generation, then we're going to be living on this planet at a time when God is going to... How's it written? God will take the reins into His own hands and He will make a speedy work. Okay? We're going to see things happen that the prophets and the sages have dreamed about. We're going to see it. We're going to experience. We're going to receive it. And I'll tell you what, folks, we have a birthday coming. We do. All of us do. It will be a shared event. Now, the world doesn't know that. Most of Christianity doesn't know that yet. I'm just asking that let's focus here. We go back here to understand what the focus over here really means. I brought you out with a strong arm. I plagued Pharaoh till he let you go. And you didn't come out poor either. God's telling us something through His people and their experience. My, what a time to be living.